So Jennifer, I'm so happy we are so live and we're on YouTube live for the first time. I find it exciting because I am often on YouTube looking at videos, watching some of my favorite shows, right? Listen to folks talk about primarily a subject that I was happy I didn't hit you with the subject, right? Hit you with NFTs because you were probably going to say what, why, and I'm not interested, nor do I know anything about that. But what Jamila and I are doing is focusing on ways to talk to creative people, speak to artists about the subject, primarily though, focusing on what the benefits are.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I asked you to be on the show, my goal was to say, let's talk about ownership. Let's talk about legacy building. Let's talk about how artists need to be paid what they're owed. And that is really the premise of this discussion. You've been speaking about this a lot lately. Do me a big favor and tell the people who you are and what you do.
Sure.
Please, please.
So I'm actually fun fact about me that most people don't know. I'm actually really shy when it comes to I don't know if it's shy or if it's just like beat down by the world when it comes to like showing off my skill set and my talent. So I am like working my nerve up to like calling myself what I'm doing. So we'll start
Yeah.
off with that.
Okay.
So my name is Jeniffer Perez Caraballo. I am Boriqua and I guess you can call me kind of like an artist, kind of like a healer sometimes, I just be existing. A lot of the work that I have done other work as well, but I think what I noticed when doing a lot of the work that I was doing, I did a lot of social justice work, was that we did a lot of time talking about what was wrong. We did a lot of time talking about um, just like all of the things that like undoing so much that I wasn't doing enough with me and my community, like I don't know, like experiencing all the things that we were hoping to one day cultivate in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where Karaya Respira came in. Karaya Respira is Karaya is allegedly because so much of our language has been like watered down or integrated into like Spanish, for example, is a Taino word, or, which Taino is not the right name. Taino is the colonizer name that they were given, or we were
Right.
given. And so it's the moon spirit. It's related to the moon. There's different ways that folks have said Karaya, and there were several tribes, and so I think or several groups of people. And so I think I say that with that, right? So that's Karaya. Karaya is the moon, and the moon spirit, and she keeps the schedules of Atabe. And Atabe is, I hate to use the word goddess, but
Yeah.
a being who exists, and it's related to nature, waters, like birthing, menstruation, all the wonders of the world, right? Because no one can tell me that I get to bleed for a whole week and a half and not die. Like that's a wonder, my dude.
Right. Yeah. No doubt.
And so I just think it's something really beautiful about pace.
Mm.
In this world, in capitalism, like pace is something that is annoying.
Yeah.
And I think that pace is everything,
Mm.
especially for like neurodivergent folks. Sometimes, we go at a faster pace or at a slower pace than other people sometimes.
Yeah.
So pace is something that I wanted to like really highlight, or really bring in. And my family is from one part of my family is from Guayanilla, Puerto Rico, which I spent a good amount of time there, and it's actually a very like indigenous town, like in our culture.
Yeah.
We've forgotten a lot of who we were. There's a lot of like, where did all this come from? But it's
Mhm.
super indigenous. There's a big like Afro-Indigenous community there. We are, I'm not gonna lie, my family was there, but they held all the cultural stuff, right? And stories that you kind of remember, kind of don't. And so that's kind of where it came from. We've always had a relationship with the moon. We've
Yeah.
always talked about it. When I would hang out with my cousins, we would talk about Mira la Luna. So that's where she comes in. Now, respira is a Spanish word. Respira is breath. It's just to breathe. And so I think that when I look at my community, what I wish more than anything is the opportunity to breathe, right? To just take a
Yeah.
breath and really feel it and let our lungs expand and breathe in all the beauty and exhale all the ugly. And sometimes we're not like really allowed to do that. So that's really where Karaya Respira comes from. And so, true to my Taurus rising nature, I did it through jewelry and copper jewelry. Mostly, I'm branching out into other ones. It's just really expensive.
Yeah.
Um, so, fun fact about copper: my great grandmother on my dad's side. Now they're from Barranquita, Puerto Rico, which is a different place. She was given a free apartment, which would later be called the projects or La Residenciales in Puerto Rico, in the city, in exchange for her like a little tiny house and her plot of land, which wasn't much. Like these houses didn't have like, you know, they didn't have like some of them didn't even have floors, right? So like people thought they were
Right.
really like going up. But the reason they did that was because the copper underneath their feet was super valuable and nobody knew that the mountains were littered with copper. And so copper is like not only spiritually significant, but the more I learn about myself and like my where I come from and who came before me, like
Hmm.
copper ends up being almost everything in my storyline. Um, so really, I'm just like a healer, artist, person who exists, if that makes sense.
Yo, and exists beautifully in the way that you do, man. I wanted to
Absolutely.
ask,
Yeah.
yeah, when did you start? When did you start making jewelry?
So I think that like I could talk a lot, by the way, and I totally love being just letting y'all know. I like little PSA. I'm gonna take it over real quick.
That's
So I
awesome.
have. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Absolutely, girl. Talk away.
Thank you. So I have ADHD, or I am an ADHD brain is what I call it. I don't have ADHD. ADHD is not something
Yeah.
you can catch. Like it's not a terrible thing. I just operate differently. And I think that one of the big things about ADHD people is that we get in trouble a lot because we like tend to like interrupt, right? An interruption is something that is frowned upon. So by all means, interrupt me. So what
That's
was the
right.
question
Jump in,
again?
Jamel. Jump in.
Nah, I'm fascinated. I'm
Right?
loving this story. I'm as half you know Puerto Rican myself, like just hearing the background and where your artistry comes from. I love hearing that. I'm a creative myself. We both are creative, so to hear your story, it's beautiful because
Yeah.
that's where the essence of art is. Obviously, it's passion, it's humanity, it's those two things coming together and expressing that the way you see fit, and it all comes from your culture, your experiences, the people you were around. So
Right.
it's beautiful. I love hearing that, and that's why we're here, because we want to make sure that that full expression is to ourselves, to who the creator is. And that's
Mhm.
exactly why we're in this space of NFTs, and that's why we invite artists like yourself who may like, obviously you do jewelry, so you are in that space where that you can use your art for economic reasons, because it is important.
Mhm.
We are in this space where it's like, yes, art is important and we want to lead with passion, but we're kind of set up in a place where it's like, hey, how can we benefit from that now? And there's nothing wrong with putting our art into the world and injecting that and getting something in return for that, because it's necessary. It is necessary. So
Absolutely.
we want to know, what are your thoughts in, and I'm not sure how much you know about NFTs or not, or but from what you've gathered from our conversation about just ownership, what do you feel about that, and being in the creator economy? Let's start there.
And before, let me preface that that is such an amazing question. I swear to God, Jamil and I sometimes share the same brain cells because I'm sitting here looking at your response to a question that I asked about a week ago. How do you define the creator economy? And you said, and I quote, for me as an arts funding or arts fundraising professional, which I really want to talk about that too. A creator economy is all about breaking down barriers and bureaucracies so that, and this is all
Mm.
caps, so my God, this is so important, so that direct funding for artists' visions and community joy is paramount. I love it.
That's what it
I
is right
love
there. That's what it is. That was
it.
beautifully said. Yeah. Yeah.
Expound on the facts.
Yeah.
Talk to me, Jen.
Yeah, please do. Like, tell us what do you feel about that?
So
And
this is
especially in light of COVID-19, because I know COVID had a particular impact on your family,
mhm,
and I know you're still in that mode of recovering, man.
mhm.
So talk to me about that in the creator economy.
Mm.
Oh yeah. So I decided to enter the creator economy literally like probably like 2 months before COVID hit. How long have I been making jewelry? I just remember the original question. I've been making
Yeah.
jewelry technically since I was a child. I think a lot of us do, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be like at the beach with seashells. I don't know, we did that a
Mhm.
lot. Rocks in your backyard, sticks. Like I just taught somebody how to make a bracelet out of like como que se llaman dandelions, right? Because we used to do that all the time. Like we used to make
Yeah.
bracelets when I was younger of dandelions. Like
Yeah.
they used to grow a lot. I grew up in the north end of Hartford. There were some empty lots, and like those empty lots would like blossom with like the dandelions. That's what we would make them with.
Yeah.
So in theory, I've been making this for forever. In practice, like or like as folks in the West like to like think about stuff. I guess officially I bought my first set of pliers and my first wire December no embute. I bought it November 2019. That was the
Wow.
first time I ever touched copper wire. My dad was a plumber's assistant, so I was really used to like all the different things that are now art for me. And
Mm.
so it's like really beautiful because I'm also working with, and I don't talk about it. I don't talk a lot about a lot of stuff actually. People think I do, but I don't. But my dad was a plumber's assistant, and he always had like copper tubes and like nuts and bolts and like pliers and stuff. And we try to get into it and like do stuff with it. My mom would get so mad because it's dangerous
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
So when did I start getting into the economy? It was probably around December 2020. No, I'm both January 2020. In December, I felt like the courage to be like, I could do this. Let me just break it out and let me do it. And so January, I released it, Karaya, Respira, and I never do that ever. I think I've, for the most part, hidden most of my talents and who I am.
Mm.
Uh, I've been sitting a lot with the idea. There's this book I read. It's called Silence in the Mountain, and it's this like New York Times. I've been talking about it a lot, but it's a New York Times reporter who's like so upset that no one will talk to him about something that happened. Like an indigenous community wouldn't talk to him about something that happened. So
Right.
it really got me thinking about the culture of silence and the culture of hiding.
Mm.
Because a lot of us are taught to hide, and it doesn't come from a place of bad. It comes from a place of love and protection because we face so much.
Yeah.
So when I hit the economy, the creator economy, it was like, I can't believe I'm even doing this, right? Like,
Yeah.
so, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I was like, yo, I need to pause this because it
Yeah.
was just so much. I couldn't figure out how I was gonna get to like the post office and like how I was gonna get
Mm,
materials. I am like a chronically ill individual. And
Yeah.
so COVID was very scary for us. I don't get good medical care. So like we was trying to avoid it at all costs. And then
Mhm.
I started a como que se llama, a mutual aid network where we fed mad people. So I got lost in all of that, right?
Yep.
Um, but I think too that's a form of creating, right? Like it's creating
Yep.
the things that Karaya Respira had set out to do in the first place. Because Karaya Respira is just me, right? Like it's just like kind of like what I think and what I see and bring to the world. So yeah, so like there were actual breaks. And I think that's something that we forget about when it like it's a privilege to create.
Mm.
You gotta have fucking
Absolutely.
space to create, right? So when the
Yeah.
pandemic hit, like I ain't have no fucking space to create because people were
Yeah.
just, I mean, I was creating other things, people were hungry, people were sick,
Right.
people were dying, like people were confused and misinformed, and there was so much more to do. As far as ownership goes, I don't know if y'all want to talk about. Can you talk a little bit more about what ownership means to y'all? Like, I'm more interested in.
Absolutely. I was going to mention that with NFTs, a non-fungible token, it simply is a new way to own things. And at the end of the day, what we're finding and that we're going to find in the future is that a lot of people are going to be using NFTs, which are also known as smart contracts. The NFT is simply information about the object that you're selling or trading with another person. And so, what we believe and what we know is that, especially in this day and age where artists and musicians and creative people have simply been crapped upon forever. Our second episode, Jamil, you remember this? We talked about musicians throughout history who've been crapped upon. Folks like
Right,
Prince,
right,
simple example, right?
right.
But yeah, with NFTs, you can actually basically point out, hey, I'm the owner of this object, I created it. And also, this is how I want other people to use it once they buy it. And this is also what I want for royalties once it sells, not just the first time, but the second time and the third time. And every time that this item is sold, I want to be able to get at least 5% in royalties. And so the NFT as a smart contract, as a new way of doing things, as a new way of sharing your art is, I believe, and I know, and I'm seeing it, the wave of the future. People are using them for real estate. We interviewed a sister down in Atlanta who's using them for medical records. But it really is a way for you to say, I own this. I don't need a middleman to tell me this is what it's worth, right? So we're talking
Mhm.
about music
Right.
publishing, right? So you created a beautiful jewelry and now you want to create an NFT. The beauty of what you do is you can literally say, here's a digital version. Here are some of my mock-ups, drawings, any of that. But then also, here's the actual physical thing you just bought in the mail as an unlockable is what they call it. So ownership is simply what we know ownership to be. And I think in this new economy, we now as artists and creative people have a new opportunity to stake our claim and make sure nobody's crapping on us when it comes to our stuff, right?
Mhm.
Stealing it, right? Um, all these other things. So
Right. And just to specify, and just to add to that, uh, where it first really took off initially, because both Ira and I know that after the first year of this NFT boom, sales were upwards to $1 billion, over $1 billion. Now, the
2020,
essence of what an NFT, in essence, what an NFT is, it's digital ownership. So you think of your graphic designers, you think of your digital creators who make their art through a digital medium, right? Through whether it's graphic design or just digital art, whatever that looks like, right? And a lot of the times when tell that where that came from, anyone can post it up and get a bunch of likes on it and say,
Mhm.
oh, like that was a cool picture or piece of art. Whose is it? Yeah, you see a lot of people, they'll put their handle like in the art or something like that, just to minimize that and just to let people know this is my piece of art. But now NFTs allow, and what smart contract does, and allows to inject piece of code. I know you're not too savvy with, I know you have bad luck with technology and all that, but, a piece of code, a tracker to let you know, that a receipt to say, this
a
is
receipt.
so-and-so's, and this is
Yeah.
the only one. This is right. This is the only thing that this person has and owns. Like, this is unique. There's no way that someone can copy it, duplicate it, much like what cryptocurrency is. Now, how that leaks over and expands to artists like yourselves and creative entrepreneurs like us is we can layer these things now. We can use this as a tool, as an extension to market ourselves even more and to go into a bigger community. Now you're probably thinking like, I easily just sell my jewelry like on Etsy or Amazon or through my Instagram, which is what you want to do. That you
Yeah.
have to do that, right? In order to expand your business and grow, right? On the business side of it, right? But to really dive into the community of creators and collectors and people who actually do appreciate art, like an Etsy does. NFT can expand that, and you
Yeah.
can do so much more with that creatively. Is kind of like a strategy that Ira and I are trying to put together for artists to understand the use of this and how they
Yeah.
can really grow
So
as an artist.
I
So,
was gonna say
so
you
you.
do you do like, don't you do like single one of one limited editions, all of those sorts of
Mm.
things too? Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's
So
really the world we're in here. Yeah.
There's a
yeah, I think
scarcity model to that, yeah, especially with NFTs. Yeah.
I think so. There's like so many layers to this conversation, right? On one
Absolutely.
hand,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
like I have a lot of thoughts and feelings and ideas around ownership as an idea,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to like art or artistry. Um, so I'm a facilitator by like that's what I used to do. That's what I still do sometimes. And so basically, I get paid to have conversations with people. And so my art was just another form of conversation. And it's another way for people to not trick, but really get people into the conversations, right? Because it's a much more fun way.
Yeah.
And part of that, I talk about that because conversations, you get lost. It gets lost easily who said what, right? And who added what. And I don't think that's always a bad thing. Um, and arguably, like I make hoops, right? Like hoops are a part of what I make because I've been wearing hoops since I was a kid. All of us have been. Like I have, like I have. If I was to make a growing up story of a young Boriqua in a city, in the inner city, like all those like stories men like to make about themselves, it would have a central scene where she talks to her mother and negotiates wearing bigger hoops. Like no lie, it would be a part of it. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and make hoops. I don't know who the hell would pay for hoops from me because hoops are like cheap. You can get them for like 50 cents if you know where to get them. But I did it anyways, right? Because it was part of a conversation. But then who owns hoops, right? Like the Nubian, like these come from Africa tradition. I think it was a Nubian tradition.
Yeah.
Both men, all peoples, right? Because we keep saying men and women, as men and women have always been the thing that we call people.
Right.
Or all people were
beyond
hoops.
the binary, right?
Right, exactly. All people were hoops. And so it's a tradition that has been carried on from there. Now, obviously, like, like there's so many nuances that go into that, right? But you have hoops being like recreated over and over again by people who shouldn't, don't buy from them, and then people who should because this is how they grew up, right?
Right.
And so hoops are a part of an artistry that has been co-opted by capitalism, right?
Right.
And has been like both the spiritual significance as well as like the cultural significance, as well as like all of those little stories, right? Like the decades of stories between mothers and daughters, because it's turned into mothers and daughters around like, can I wear bigger hoops, or can you buy me some hoops? Can you buy me some gold hoops? How about bamboo hoops, please? Like, you know what I mean? Like you first generation explaining to your mother what bamboo earrings are. Like, like those are, you lose all of those things in the capitalistic view of hoops and art, right? And jewelry.
Right.
And so, under ownership is what it is, and I couldn't recreate it. I could never recreate what is rightfully mine, right? And so like, there's that part of the conversation that I'm struggling with. However, the other side to this is that there actually is something that is happening all the time to creators of jewelry, and creators of like spiritual items, and that is that people will steal our pictures. And when they steal, I take beautiful photos of my photos are a love note to the jewelry I just created, right? I take particular care with the angles and the lighting. You can say, okay. And people steal those photos and then they sue the artist for it. And so like, there's a lot of digital stuff that happens. There's a lot of, we're maneuvering. This is like an old art, right? Like jewelry making is it's really old art.
Ancient, very
ancient, right? This is how we've decorated our bodies forever, right? When we started decorating our bodies is when we became human, right? Because we expressed ourselves. We expressed what's inside of ourselves to the outside, right? It's all that profession. Computers just came here yesterday in comparison, right? And you're trying to mesh these two things together. And so there are a lot of times where we are getting played, where other people are getting played. So for example, people will steal people's pictures and sell them to other people for cheaper, right? But then you'll get a really bad version of it, right? And so like all these things are happening.
And that happens on a whole industrial level. Like that's that goes all the way to the top.
So when I think about myself, like protecting myself legally in this society that we have created, right? Okay, I kind of have to think about ownership of my photos because crazy shit is happening. I don't want to get sued for my own photo that I took. You know what I mean? I also do a lot of education, and so like I created some like I am not a digital artist, but I created some like digital art that talks about copper care and like those kinds of things, because again, like copper is one of those things that has been shitted on so much because it takes care of maintenance.
It's such an important thing. It's so important, copper.
Yes. And I remember
so many great properties.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I remember there being a news report on the Spanish news when I was younger, talking about like copper jewelry being a bad thing and how to like avoid it and what it does and all of these things. And so like it's been shitted on, colony still, right? It's been shitted on in a lot of ways. And so
Yeah.
I'd like to do a lot of education around it and around the use of jewelry and around the use of like artistry and around the use of healing and around the use of things as tools, because I, as a sick person, lack the pace of, first of all, a machine, and then second
Yeah.
of all, an able-bodied individual, you
Right.
know?
Hmm.
And so I go really slow sometimes, and sometimes I go so slow I can't believe people are still buying from me.
Of
And it's
course.
beautiful. Yeah, but it feeds my hope too for like for sick people in the world to find our place, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
so I
just,
forgot where I was.
I want to, well, I was going to interrupt you, still to say that we are at our time and Jamil has to go teach young folks
Go
filmmaking.
teach young folks.
But how can people find your jewelry?
Oh, yeah. So you can find my jewelry on Etsy. www.etsy.com/shop/Karaya, Karay, Karaya,
Hey,
Respira, Respira. You can also find me on Instagram or yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm trying to branch out, but not really at the same time because
Listen, I want like a half hour does not do us justice for the kinds of conversations
yeah,
that we want to have. And we want to keep expanding this. We want to have like really deep conversations on this. Like we want to expand this, like, because again, a half hour is not, it won't do us justice. But, you
absolutely.
know, from what I've learned from you so far, like I would love both Ira and I'm sure she would love this. I'm sure I'm speaking for her when I say this, to continue to connect with you and even help you on, you know, things, because, you know, we can't do everything by ourselves, and we're
No,
only as strong as like the sum of our parts, you know. So
absolutely.
I think we should definitely continue that. But I just enjoyed listening to you talk, honestly. Like you know, you have a great story, and I love your insights on things. So we will pick this up. We will pick this up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is your IG the same thing too? To find you as well?
Yeah.
yep. So you can find me on
Okay.
Karaya, Karaya, Respira, and I think I just changed it to Respira Amorzote, which is a Spanish word. I'm sure y'all can type it up somewhere. Respira, Amorzote, Amorsete. That's like my personal page that's slowly turning into like my diary and Karaya Respira's diary, and my clients' diary, right? Because we have a lot of conversations. We do deep dives. So
Nice.
I think that's
Oh,
when
that's
I think
awesome.
about when it comes to ownership, and yeah, there's space for all of this to happen. Thank you so much for
Let's keep
having me.
talking.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
being here.
Absolutely. All right, Jennifer, you have a great day. Yep,
CreativeTraders.com,
let them know.
everybody. That's where we'll post this as well. And YouTube, Black Tech Futures Media, every week, every Wednesday at 8:30. Thank
You
everybody
already
for
know the
being
deal.
here.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Have a great morning.
Besos.